Should we test it?
Test. Okay, now it looks like you guys should be able to hear us now. Sorry about that. Can you guys hear us now?
I see. There's a delay.
It takes a sec, yeah.
Yeah.
Let us know if you can hear us, and then we'll keep going. Good. All right, sweet.
Nice. Okay, you want to repeat everything you said?
Sure. Yeah, so this is Raffi. For those who do not know, probably a decent number of you guys do know who this is. And remember, Raffi and I started this channel together a couple years ago. And so like if you go back on my channel, like the first 50 to 75 videos, a number of them Raffi and I are together in. And Raffi's a big Pokemon collector, CCG, TCG collector of like a number of different things. We both love a lot of the stuff that's behind us here. And yeah, she's a good friend of mine. And Raffi was actually very good friends with my girlfriend from high school, and have been friends for a really long time. And that's how we met. So
I always forget about your son, Raffi. Is he referring to my son, or he thinks that I'm your son?
What's going on?
I always forget about your son, Raffi.
Oh, my son.
I do have a son, but I'm not Jake's son, if that's what he's asking.
Oh, he looks just like you. People think we look alike.
I don't think we look anything alike. Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, so I've done a couple of videos on the channel since then, but not a ton. Mostly been super busy. But
that's true. Yeah, you have done some of your like Star Wars overviews and stuff.
Yeah,
I noticed that's been really popular. That a lot of people from the Star Wars community was like, we're looking at. You know, that has like 6,000 views.
Yeah, I saw some of those videos got a lot more views. I think that they've also been helpful for people who want like an introduction to the collecting aspect of the game. There are a bunch of videos out there on like how to play the game. I actually still don't know how to play. I'm still just a collector, but I've been playing a lot of the Lord of the Rings TCG. There's like a free client to play online. It's amazing. It's basically the only like video game I play right now, and it's really good. Yeah. So Raffi's like, super, super smart, super knowledgeable. Like, you know, but not as much about Pokemon anymore. Yeah, exactly. I still love Pokemon, but I haven't kept up to date on the market.
Not as much as I have.
So I'm here to tag along and listen to Jake, but also answer any questions about Magic, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and other games as well.
Yeah. So if you guys have any questions, we can also talk about Pokemon too. You know, anything that's on people's minds as people start to filter in here. I
do. I've played Magic for a long time.
So what is your main focus, Raffi? I like WotC, etc. So main focus, what do you like to collect in Pokemon? And then talk a little bit maybe about like what else you're really into collecting.
Yeah, for Pokemon right now, mostly just focusing on modern because I'm priced out of vintage, or at least the vintage I didn't have from when I was a kid. But the sets that I currently love are the trainer galleries, like the Pokemon that have trainers in the background. So I really like the set Cosmic Eclipse. I did a whole video about that one on this channel. And then from Brilliant Stars and Astral Radiance, I'm trying to collect the whole like subsets of the trainer galleries. In terms of other games, my main focus is Star Wars CCG. I've already essentially completed my collection. I made a video about that. And I'm onto the more obscure products that same company, Decipher, created. So they had another Star Wars game called Young Jedi. They had another non-Star Wars themed game called Wars TCG, which is based on Star Wars without the IP, which is also really cool. At some point, I'll make a video about those, hopefully.
Do you play Magic?
Yes, I played Magic ever since I was in high school with a bunch of our mutual friends. We used to play all the time. Unfortunately, still don't have a ton of time for it, but I do have a bunch of boxes saved up, either as investments, but also just to like crack for draft if it ever happened. So recently, a friend of ours had a bachelor party, and I brought a box of Conspiracy 2, Take the Crown, and we thought we would play it like for a few hours because we had a bunch of other board games to play as well. And we ended up just loving the decks we made and played game like matches of Magic for the entire weekend for like 2 days straight. It was amazing. It was a couple of years ago. So that's my like recent favorite set, Conspiracy Take the Crown, for like a group of people. Super, super fun.
Market question. What are your thoughts on card flipping? Is it worth it at this stage or hold off? And I don't know, tell us a little bit about your Raffi's, you're always doing a little bit of buying and selling, a little bit of flipping, but mostly in what have you been mostly buying and selling these days?
Yeah, it's a good
Not so
question.
much Pokemon.
Yeah, exactly. So I used to do for Star Wars CCG. Basically, my goal was to complete my collection and do it at like a net profit to myself. So end up with what I consider a complete collection, but also have like not lost money. So it involved like a lot of flipping along the way, or basically buying collections, keeping some stuff, selling the rest. So I said a lot of the time went into selling. I think right now I'm into like really obscure stuff, which maybe we'll get into later. But like similar approach there, where I find a lot of joy in like completing collection, chasing down the hard stuff, but along the way, basically committing to saying by the time this collection's complete, I'll have actually earned money, not lost money within that game.
Yeah, I would say Raffi and I started pretty similar, and then I got like insane. Raffi's more of like a normal guy who continues to do this, and is like you're I think just as big of a fan as this stuff probably as me, but just you also have like 3 kids and
exactly.
a lot of other things,
and just limits. I'm a lot more risk averse than you two. I think
you've
been more successful because you've been willing to take risks. And for me, it was always this thing of like, I will never spend more than $1,000 more than I made, and that's like the limit, right? If I ever get to negative $1,000, it's like sell as much as I can. And so now I'm like positive a few $100s. So it's like always within a thin band, so I don't take that many risks.
It might be interesting for people to hear about like the conversations that we used to have like before the boom, you know, because so like one time we were just hanging out. This was probably 2018 maybe, and we both like realized that we were like both really enjoyed Pokemon cards. We didn't know. We were just like at a dinner hanging out and started talking about it, and then that's when I started getting like pretty heavy into it, and Raffi was like a person who I would talk a lot about, like what I'm purchasing with, you know, what I'm purchasing, what my plans are, what my hopes are in terms of like where the market could go, why I might buy it. What did you make of all of those conversations at the time and all my purchasing? I know John was like, what is the
well, I guess
what is this guy doing? Why is he putting so much money into this?
Compared to our other friends, I definitely took it a lot more seriously because like I understood it. But I also like, I was like, you're taking a lot of risks that I think are like maybe smart moves, but smart if you're in a certain financial situation, right? And so I guess I should clarify, like, thankfully I'm like fine, right? Like my family is doing fine. It's just like I wouldn't want to take those kinds of risks. I'm more of like a very risk averse long-term investor. Like almost all of my like non-card stuff is in the S&P 500 for the long term. That's kind of how I play it. So when I heard Jake talking about this stuff, I was like, that's really clever. It's really cool. I would never do that. Like never. He was talking about like even buying certain cards at the time that like I wanted. You're like, oh, you should get this card because it's like there's a good price on it right now. And I was like, that card's like $300. That's insane. Obviously, my numbers have shifted since then. Now I would totally buy a $300 card if I wanted it. But at the time, I was buying like like $20 cards.
Yeah, it's funny how like when you start spending more, you just start becoming like more comfortable with that. But it's also part of it too is as you take money out of the hobby and you realize that you can like sell things and you feel some stability, you get more comfortable spending. But it is pretty risky. I was on someone's channel last night, Nostalgianomics, and was talking about like, you know, the luck of it all. And like, even thinking back, like even after it's all worked out, I still think back and I'm like, it was risky. It was like it was a little much maybe at times, but yeah. I did have a very strong, like there were certain things that I had really strong convictions on and wanted to own as much as possible. And then other things that I thought were good value and underpriced, but I certainly didn't expect them to explode like they did in a short amount of time. I mean, even by like September, before Logan Paul jumped in the hobby, I was already starting to have conversations with Raffi about like, whoa, like these prices have doubled or tripled on a lot of this stuff in such a short amount of time. That's kind of scary. Like it's great, but it also feels a little like I don't know if this is going to be able to sustain itself. And then some of those cards that tripled during that time period, when I already had that like I should probably sell this, went up like another 5 times more, you know, because it was such a huge explosion. So it's these markets, I've learned a lot. I mean, the volatility of these markets is insane, and it can change so quickly.
I remember you and I having this conversation about being like, essentially, if you want to buy a card, are you going to wait until you get a really good deal on it? And at least at the time, you told me a version of like, not really, right? Like if you have a conviction about that card for long term, you won't try to wait to get like $5 off. You'll just buy it now. I'm the total opposite. I'm like, make small margins now to justify the amount I'm spending overall, and like a little bit less. Maybe it's just a philosophical difference on like finance, but I kind of don't believe in having long-term convictions on anything other than like the average or the index, because I think it's just extremely hard to overperform. It takes probably a lot of luck too. And so it's not to say that people who did well and got it right did not have convictions that were true. I think it's just a priori so hard to know. And I don't presume to know basically about anything like that. So essentially just being a low risk investor.
Yeah, I feel that to some degree. So I don't, that I'm like I'm taking like a financial analyst job, and I'm going to like get more involved.
Yeah.
And, I think we've talked about that. So it'll be interesting to kind of apply some of this stuff and to see how I do in real estate and other sorts of places with sort of the way that I think about things and the way that I do things. I'm interested to see like how applicable it is across. I've been investing in stocks since I was like 12 and around, very comfortable with companies. But it'll be interesting to, I mean, my thing has always been like, if you're willing to put in a lot of time and do a lot of research and the numbers a lot better than everyone else around you, like there's generally really good opportunity there. But demand is very hard to predict. And particularly on something like this, where it's not like you're investing in a company that has some sort of like amazing invention or amazing idea that people haven't really heard about or taken seriously yet. And you really trust the management team and you see their business plan and you feel like they're going to be able to like have this amazing competitive advantage over some amazing product like that. Obviously, even like investing or angel investing in something like that, like most companies fail anyway. Most startups fail anyway, even when they have great ideas and concepts. But I think situations like that, you can, with strong conviction, you can, and when you really know what you're doing, I think,
and as long as it's
extremely well,
as long as it's not an efficient market, right? So that's the thing, is like most of what I was talking about was just my philosophy on the stock market, which is more or less an efficient market,
where everything's
but totally believe that in private markets, or especially something like Pokemon, you can know more than other people, right? Like it's not necessarily true that information will get priced into the market as soon as you make it, if you're careful.
I mean, and that's, a big reason why I put a lot of money into Pokemon was, first of all, the amount of money I had fit Pokemon very well, because I did not have like hundreds of millions of dollars to be throwing around in the stock market or real estate, or even like the sports card market, which was a lot more expensive. One thing we talk a lot about, right, is like someone like Warren Buffett. Like Warren Buffett made his highest percentages ever at the beginning of his career when he had the least money, because when you only have a few $100,000 or $1 million or a few $100 or a few $1,000, you have so many options where you can put all of that money to work. Whereas when you have a lot of money, there aren't that many things in the world that like you can put that much money into, and it's likely going to be very, very huge. And so to Raffi's point, it's probably going to be optimized and everyone's going to know about it, because it's going to be like Apple. Like now Warren Buffett can only buy like,
once you have $4 million to buy a single Pokemon card, there's only one $4 million Pokemon card you can buy.
When you apply to Pokemon, and everyone probably knows about it already. Whereas, and people come to me and they say, can I start doing this with only $50, only $100, with only two? And it's like, you can make tremendous gains and percentages on $100 by flipping and being engaged in the market. Now, if you're starting with $100, you have to understand that making a 10 times gain is only $900. And that if you look at your, like the time, your time value, like your time, you might end up making like less than minimum wage, depending on like how much time you're putting in doing that, but it might be extremely fun. So that's the downside of working with very low amounts, is that even if you're making really huge percentages, it's off of a very low principal amount. So it's not going to be that much, and in a lot of cases, you probably would have made more money if you just, even got like a minimum wage job potentially. So you want to like figure that out probably, but
none of this is worth my time. Absolutely. Like we take the amount of money I've made versus time. Definitely not worth it. It's just for fun. I guess that answers your original question, but I've seen a lot of nice questions about my name. There's someone named Raffi. So apparently I've heard this before, that my pronunciation is Raffi, not Raffi. And apparently that's an Armenian pronunciation. And I live in an area that randomly happens to have a lot of Armenian immigrants. So everyone thinks I'm Armenian, but I'm not. To answer the other person's question, my dad is Israeli. So yes, also an Israeli pronunciation of the name.
What YouTube content or YouTubers do you enjoy generally? Do you watch YouTube?
Yeah, there's an amazing channel called Pokenomics. Watch all of Jake's videos, of course. that's a given. Trying to, I mean, sometimes I like to watch like openings for fun, especially if it's a new set. So I watch like Darium's Pokemon.
Yeah.
I subscribe to like Rusty, TCA Gaming, Z&G Emporium. I'd say those are the main ones I watch. And then in terms of other content, like for Magic, I'm interested in the gameplay more so than the collecting. So I watch a lot of gameplay videos. My main ones are like MTG Goldfish. I like everything that Seth does. He has like really fun and interesting deck ideas. I watch almost all of his videos. And then also LSV whenever he drafts Vintage Cube. That's like my go-to. But which, by the way, for anyone who knows what this is, do you know what a cube is for Magic?
No.
You basically create your own set to draft. And so there are different cubes that the company WotC creates for the online game. And so Vintage Cubes, like all the old cards, like Black Lotus is in it, and like the Moxen, all that. And you actually draft it, like, virtual, not real copies of those cards. But the Vintage Cube requires so much strategy because there's like 500 cards in the cube, all from the entire history of Magic. So you have to know like all these keywords and what all of them do and how they interact. And so I think LSV is like a genius, right? To be able to play Vintage Cube well, you have to know all these interactions.
Do you watch any other channels like outside of TCG space? Do you watch YouTube ever?
Oh yeah, just for fun. Yeah, all the time. I'm really into like philosophy, politics, psychology, all those topics that start with a P. So yeah, a lot of that stuff is on YouTube.
Yeah, Raffi and I, before we started talking about Pokemon, we're mostly talking about all of those subjects, and still probably mostly talk about those subjects.
Yeah, we have to create a separate channel just for politics. Call it Pokenomics.
Yeah, it's amazing. There are even people who get angry at you in this. Imagine if you started like a politics channel and you started sharing your opinions. Yeah. What year of singles are you currently working at picking up and is underrated still or in future?
I guess, same answer for me is just like modern cards are the main ones I'm not priced out of. I don't know about their long-term potential. This whole thing about like being printed a lot obviously is very true. So like Jake said in the last video, like TBD what the demand is long-term. But I've just seen like so many like random modern cards that I bought for fun even 5 years ago go up a lot. I think that I tend to have a little bit more of a knack for knowing what people are going to like in the long term. Like I remember when the first alt art cards came out, right? Especially like the alt art GXs, now like the cards with the trainers in them. It's like, these are really cool. They feel really unique, really different from what Pokemon has done before. And so I imagine that like adult collectors will be into these in the future. And at least so far, I think that's been right. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a lot more about like when is the best time to buy things. So because I don't, part of it's just hopefulness, but like I hope that people stay interested in this in the long run and that the market continues to do well. But I do think that it might be a better time to buy. I personally am betting that it's going to be a better time to buy some of these alt arts and some, in a year from now, even 6 months from now. When a lot of the supply comes back from PSA and prices continue to go down. So on grading, so more people can actually send their cards out, more of that supply comes out, more of it hits the market. I do think people have like probably pretty big grading piles of alt arts and things like that. So there's probably more that they're planning on selling, but they don't want to sell until they grade it. So that's kind of being held back from the market, that type of stuff. Generally speaking, we saw that in something like Hidden Fates, which I think is probably a similarly sort of popular thing. I'm expecting to see that again. So I'm kind of waiting for a lot of these $100, $200 like PSA 10 slabs to be more in like the 30 to 40 range. We've already seen that, like the Gold Star dogs from base set, they were like $400 in PSA 10 when they first came out. Let's see if I have an example from Sword and Shield base. I have some around here. Probably most of you guys know the Zacian and Zamazenta. Here it is. Like these. So like these were like $200, $300, $400, and now they're like 40. And so
PSA 10.
Yeah, and so like I picked up a few of them sort of around that 40 price. Not because I think it's like amazing stonk. I just think that like I like those cards, and like that I feel comfortable with sort of that price point, generally speaking. and I'm waiting for that for a number of cards I like. Then you're going to have like the Umbreon, the most popular alt art right now, at least. I'm not expecting that $600 card to come down to $40. I just think there's way too much popularity on that. But even that card coming down to 200 or 150 is much more appealing to me to purchase something like that. Will it ever come down that much? Just as I said in my last video, like we don't know what demand is going to do, but supply is sort of in your favor still on these sets. There will probably come a point though, if demand continues, where like the supply starts like dwindling a bit, rather than like a lot of this stuff still needs to be opened, still needs to hit the market, and certainly like the vast majority of it that is going to ever be graded has not been graded yet. So
that makes total sense. By the way, I was only talking about raw cards, so not the PSA ones. If I was collecting the PSA versions, totally would wait for that to happen. Also, speaking of the Umbreon alt art, I love that card. I think it's amazing. I don't have it, but I saw like a kid the other day, and he pulled out a stack of Pokemon cards from his pocket. Yeah. He's just like going through them, right? Just like random cards that were literally in his pocket. And the Umbreon alt art was one of them. It was like a little bit crumpled. It was like, do you know this card is worth a lot of money? He's like, oh, that's cool.
That's awesome. One thing though, I do think that it's unclear, and one thing that isn't talked about that much is actually the relationship between graded card prices and raws.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'd theorize that because you can get $600, $700 for the PSA 10, that's going to pull the prices up on the raws. A lot of those raws were selling for like $200-$300, like $300 range, while the PSA 10s were going for $600. We had people in our Discord, Patreon, like buying them out, grading them at like $100 express, and then because like 80% of them or something crazy were grading 10. Like it was just a very, very easy card to grade, that specific alt art.
Yeah, I didn't buy the crumpled pocket one. But
so you would expect there to be some relationship, but there are so many people who are just buying these cards because they like them and they're not aware of those things. And that also impacts the modern market a lot. It also is what makes the modern market the most kind of like, it's not as... There's a lot more like impulse buying going on, in my opinion, in that part of the market than in older parts of the market, where things might be a little bit more expensive, a little bit older. You have to do a little bit more research to find them. You have to understand. I liken it to like when I was at Collecticon, I had people come up to me and there were like two different groups of people and a bunch of people in the middle. But like one person would come up, would pick out a Modern Celebrations card that I had in the case and would pay me the full asking price on it immediately, $50 without asking a question. Another person would come up, look at like this Level X card, ask some questions about it, like get some history on it, then try to get me down $20, pull up their phone, look at eBay to see comp prices, right? Like the level of sort of market analysis going into that purchase versus the analysis in the other one is very interesting. And so I think that it just means that those markets, like, they're still very hot, they're still very in demand. Casual collectors are still picking up a lot of those cards, which is impacting that market. And I think that over time, a lot of that attention will shift to sort of newer sets. But we'll see.
Yeah, what I hear in what you said too is like the modern is a much less efficient market, right? You can still make money just exploiting the inefficiencies.
Yeah, and a lot, yeah, absolutely. And Dan's here, like something that we talk about, right? Like a lot of who Dan or Mason or I or people are selling when we're selling modern to, we're not selling it to people who were like investing, right? We're selling it to people who are like just consuming it like a hobby. They're not ever thinking about selling it. So that isn't as much in their head or the equation as I think some of the middle generation and some of the older vintage stuff is, although there are certainly people buying all of that too with the same type of mindset. I just think it's and maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe it's the majority of every era. That's people's mindset. But I do
depends
think
on the price point. Like for a more expensive product, you'd assume that the person will like do more research, but
yeah.
I get like raw cards from TCG Player. I find that you actually get much better prices on TCG Player than on eBay for like middle to low value raw cards.
Jake, what do you guys think was printed more back in the day? Mew Blackstar promo number 8 or Ancient Me?
Ancient Mew was with the movie. What did the Mew Blackstar promo come with?
I think it's probably, so I really don't know. Like I see bricks of the but probably I would guess the Ancient Mew, but I honestly have zero idea. Like that would be a question for people like like much more knowledgeable people who know the promos super well. Like Rusty would probably be a pretty good person. Like TCA would probably have a sense. I really don't know. I just see a lot of both all the time. I don't know if you have any like
someone who worked in a
sense.
movie theater would know.
Yeah. Yeah, promos are definitely, particularly English promos, are definitely not my specialty, in large part because basically what I know tends to be just repeating what someone like Rusty has found or figured out and has been in the hobby a lot longer than me, on stuff like that, because I wasn't really around and I wasn't buying out store, like people who have some, and I don't even think like Rusty really knows, or like these people who even have a better sense, they actually know for sure. It's more of being in the hobby for 15 years, seeing how much you get. And then also these people like bought out stores. So they would buy out like bricks of these promos, and they could compare like how many bricks of this to that. You know, I don't know, but there's a lot of both. Let's see. I have a monthly budget to buy cards, but I've mainly spent money. What is your guys' advice to start having a small profit to reinvest in my collection without having to spend money from my income?
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. So obviously you have to spend a little bit of money to make money. But for me, I try to put a margin on it. Be like, I'm not going to go this many dollars in the hole before trying to get back to zero or to net positive. So at least the way I did that mostly was with Star Wars, was just like buying collections. So I'd keep the stuff I need, sell the stuff I didn't need. Typically sell a collection for as much, if not more, when I sold it, because I could market it better, right? Like I would know what the high value cards are, so I could feature those more, describe them better, split it up if needed. It took time, but it was fun. I think it's probably pretty difficult to do if you're just buying singles and then intending to flip them that same month, right? Unless you happen to get really lucky or get really good deals. I can't imagine being able to make a profit on that. So for me, it was mostly collections.
Let's see. Yeah, I think it's very doable. I mean, the most important thing is to like sit down and do the math and start. I would start small, and I would give yourself like some practice. So I think both Raffi and I, well, I'm not sure if you started, but like I started buying just really inexpensive auctions of like lots of cards.
Me too, yeah.
And then I started kind of taking some of the best ones out of it, like putting the lots back together, maybe I bought like a lot that had like, it was a little weird that there was like some really good cards and then like some all different eras. And then I would take that and I'd put it into like 3 different lots, and I would make like a little bit of profit by selling the lots separately rather than sort of like all together, and maybe showcasing some of the cards that weren't really showcased that well. Or just sometimes you just can find an auction where the items have been showcased really well and it just goes for quite a bit under value. And so what you want to do is you want to check like eBay sold listings, and you want to try to see how much those cards raw are really selling for consistently. You want to make sure that it's actually selling decently. You can definitely check TCG Player also. And then you just want to give yourself a nice cushion, I would say. You know, at least I would want to make like 40% on something like that, which is going to protect you from it selling for a little bit under, or issue. Obviously, you have to take into account fees, you know, paying 13% probably fees, you know, if you go through eBay, something like that. And then also taking into account shipping costs, and you just want to sit down and sort of do that math. But I wouldn't be like, as long as you have the time to do it and like the passion and the interest, I think it's very doable. How scalable is it you know, that's the question of, you know, like if I want to make 10,000 a month, that would probably take a lot of skill, a lot of knowledge, a lot of energy, a lot of time, or a lot of capital, I would say. But to make, you know, 50 or $100, or even a couple $100 a month, I think doing it fairly casually, if you're interested, I think's super doable. And don't worry too much about like learn every era if you want to do that. I wouldn't worry too much about like what are going to be the best, what are the sleepers, what are the investment stuff. You generally just want to like deal in the stuff that's fairly liquid, that's moving a lot. I would probably focus mostly on like Sword and Shield and WotC if I were to do that. That would be the stuff I want to be picking up, would be the stuff that I think is selling the most and is sort of the most popular, and I'd just be trying to buy it under market and then selling it at market or closer to market.
Yeah, I agree. And I found it really fun too, because it's kind of like you get the same thrill you get from opening packs, but usually it's much better expected value when you're opening collection. You don't know all of what was in it. You're like, oh, cool, I found this thing. I will say in my experience, it's like mostly I tend to get like a pretty consistent like small profit on these things because I think I've gotten good at identifying them. But really, it's just a few collections that I got really lucky on that have basically subsidized everything else. And so obviously you have to take risks because most collections are not that great. Like I said, consistently I can do pretty well, but it's like 3 collections I can remember buying that were just amazing that basically paid for me to be in the hobby for years. And I probably wouldn't have been able to get those if I didn't know how to like what to look for. But I agree with Jake. I do the math. I'm like, I'm not going to buy something unless I quickly add up the value of all the cards that are worth like $5 or more. And if I can get the total lot for like 30 to 40% of that total value, to me, that's usually worth it. It's worth the time and make enough of a profit to feel like I made enough money. Like the money I'm going to spend on the cards with that profit is worth it.
Absolutely. And it's really going to go into the amount of time you're willing to spend. And I wouldn't don't buy more than you're sort of selling to. You want to really get a feel for like, you don't want to have like too much inventory. You don't have too much stuff. And also you don't want to have zero inventory. So kind of getting a flow for like, how many sales do you make a week? And a lot of people like, in our Discord and in the community are starting to get more experience and are starting to ramp that up as they go, where they've gone from like, selling 2 or 3 things a week to now like they're selling 7 to 10. And then they're selling like 12 to 15. And maybe they're even moving up. They were selling mostly like $5 to $15 cards and items. And now they're moving up to like mostly $50. And they're starting to flip slabs and sell slabs. And even some of them are dealing in cards right now where like this $18 grading fee is like worth it for them. And they're going to be able to make an even larger premium. Now, the more, putting that $18 in that slab is going to put you in a little bit more risk. And you're going to want an even larger, in my opinion, potential premium. Just because you don't know how long it's gonna take to get back, and you're well, I guess you don't have to pay right away. You can pay at the end, so it doesn't tie up the money that whole time. But you can run a risk of putting yourself in a difficult position if you're not budgeting and you don't have that money at the end to pay for the slabs, and then you have to sell something, or you just have to kind of manage all of that. But yeah, it's fun. And back when I was doing it a lot more, like I was flipping and reselling a lot more consistently and not putting any outside money into the hobby, I was using grading a lot to kind of increase. First, it was like I was making $30, 20, 30, 40, $50 a lot type of thing. And then I hit some big lots, just like you said. And then also like I got some lots that had like really like pretty valuable cards in it. Cards that raw, I was buying raw, maybe I was buying it for like $20. And even at that time in a PSA 10, it was a $200, $300, $400, $500 card. So even then it was pretty valuable. And that's obviously like, hitting some of those can really catapult you. I think watching like Z&G Emporium's early videos, he might've taken them down. I'm not sure. I know he's taken down a bunch of videos, but Z&G Emporium was kind of showing that sort of early stage. When I watched his videos, I felt very much like, yeah, this is sort of what I'm doing too. I think Raffi was watching it and feeling sort of the same thing. And I think that's still doable now. You just have to understand that grading fees are higher. So you have to be probably more dependent on raw and flipping raw. And
there's more people like trawling eBay for lots too. So it's a little bit hard to get good deals. But on that note, there's certain times where I've just found like fewer people on eBay. So I typically watch auctions that are going to end on like Friday, especially Friday afternoon for whatever reason. Like nobody's bidding on Friday afternoons. I get good deals then. Sunday evening is like the worst time to bid. Everyone's on eBay. So I always sell lots that like the auction ends on Sunday night. You get the most bidders.
So did I make any decisions on sending in at $18 to PSA? Yeah. Not really. My room right now is an absolute mess around Raffi. I apologize to him. And I just have like piles of cards and different things that I'm trying to figure out exactly what to send. And I'm going back and forth on it. I really don't like spending extra money for getting stuff back quicker. I tend to just like to wait with this sort of idea of like, I'm going to be doing this for the foreseeable future. And why do I need to rush to get my cards back? The vast majority of cards that I want to send, I'm not looking to sell. And so it obviously makes more sense for me to wait for if I think that we're going to get $10 prices, $8 prices in the next year or so, and just sort of wait for that so that I'm saving 500, 600, 700 bucks, depending on how many, cards I'm sending in at those prices. But I also I've been waiting so long, and $18 is so much cheaper than it's been. So I almost want to grade some things just to kind of, for lack of a better word, just reward myself or have some fun or enjoy myself. Just get some cards I've really been wanting to get slabbed and see what they would graded. So I'm kind of going back and forth on it. I also just want to get some of my stuff in that pipeline, because I have a lot of stuff I need to grade. And I don't want to grade 8,000 cards all at once, because that's just extremely expensive. And I don't want to have that. I want to sell as I'm kind of going some of it to kind of subsidize at least the grading fees. I at least want to sell enough of it to pay for the grading fees.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So right now I do have I did make a submission, which I have not sent out. And I think I put 36 cards on it, and I'm probably not going to send anything, is the truth. I think I'm leaning now towards maybe not sending anything and just waiting. I do think though that if you are looking to flip and you need more inventory to sell, the risk of not sending at 18 is that how many people are going to send at 18, and then how long is that backlog going to get, and how much longer are you going to have to wait? So I do think that it probably makes a lot of sense for most people who are flipping a lot and looking to get some particularly if you have pretty expensive cards where you're going to get a really nice $100, $200 extra. I think it's a no-brainer to send it in now if you're really looking to sell.
In terms of what would be a potential example of $100 investment for flipping, we talked already a lot about picking up lots and collections. Another thing that I would look at, I mentioned TCG Player, was I'll just give an example of this. With Magic, I really liked the Godzilla cards from Ikoria. It's a subset where they did alternate arts with pictures from Godzilla, and people were selling complete sets of those alternate cards on eBay. But you could also just buy the individual cards, all 18 or 19 of them, from TCG Player, and it came out to literally half as much. So I didn't end up flipping it because I actually was just buying it to put it in my collection. But it would have been so easy. And I think there are a few subsets in Pokemon that you could easily do that for, where you're just you buy all the cards from TCG Player, you sell them as a complete set or a complete subset on eBay for, in some cases, almost double.
Yeah, I think Legend of Luke, anything can be. It's really just about price points. So it's when you really know your price points well, and I try to scour auctions and scour raw cards. I will say that I've been doing that more in other TCGs and CCGs right now, and I've been focusing on other things outside of Pokemon. But if I was going to do it in Pokemon, I'd be doing that sort of thing, and I'd be trying to just find lots of really mint alt arts and gold cards and rainbow rares. And you just have to make sure you do want to check things like TCG Player and eBay to make sure that they're still selling and that they're still liquid, because prices on those have been fluctuating, and some can fall quite a bit. It's also why you want a really good percentage, just as a buffer. And just as Raffi said, you're going to buy some and they're not going to be as good a condition as you were hoping. They're not going to be mint like the person said, or the cards are going to fall in price a bit. And then after fees, you're going to break even or maybe even lose a tiny bit of money. That's going to happen from time to time. So just kind of being okay with that and trying to just kind of enjoy the process. And also I think viewing it as a learning experience. You're learning how to list, how to sell on eBay, what works, what doesn't work.
All that pictures. Really, I'm so terrible at taking good pictures. Terrible. But to pick up on what Jake said too, I've also gravitated more towards obscure CCGs just recently, in the past 6 months, partly because I like that feeling of it's an unexplored territory, and there's more inefficiency in the market that you can exploit by just knowing good price points and what things are worth. So in Pokemon, it's really hard. Obviously, Magic, it's really hard, right? Because there's just so many people who know this stuff.
Yeah.
But when you find a niche, like some of these CCGs I'm going after, the number of people who are collecting this in the world right now is probably less than 200, right? And so very doable to find deals on eBay. They come up less frequently, but I've found amazing deals, or just known kind of what things were worth more than other people. And so I find that more fun when it feels more unexplored and more inefficiency.
Yeah, and going back to what we were talking about in the very beginning of the chat, I think when you think about it from a speculator perspective, there can be really good opportunity that you're finding value where other people aren't finding it. Doesn't mean the demand or the market will ever agree with you. but it gives it somewhat of a chance, particularly if you have sort of a plan or some sort of understanding of what would be the catalyst for a lot of people finding this thing or discovering this thing or getting excited about this thing. So Pokemon, it's the biggest pop culture franchise ever. And Pokemon cards are like the key collectible for people our age. And we were, getting into an age where I, theorized, or a number of people theorized we might, more of us might get back into collecting it and enjoying it. So you want some sort of thesis probably for why more people are actually going to like this, or why they might like it, or how's it going to get in front of people, basically. And you can do that yourself. So a lot of markets can be created by you grading cards yourself and then just starting to put it up on eBay, starting to put it up on PWC, starting to bring it to collecticons and shows. I bring cards that people have never seen before, and they're like, oh, now and now they collect it. 5, 6,
That's
7
awesome.
months later, they're like super into it, and they collect it, and they know more about it than I do, right? Like I might have introduced them and had like some decent knowledge, and then they come back to me 6 months later and they're like freaking, crazy. They went down the rabbit hole and are like crazy experts on this.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a generalist in a lot of things. But people go, just get really into one thing and then go really deep.
I can share my thesis on the latest one I'm collecting. I said it was super obscure. This is My Little Pony CCG. I was going to make a video of this, but I'm actually waiting until I complete my collection, just because literally 2 more people in the world collecting this will make the prices go up, and I want to finish my collection first. But basically, so my kids like My Little Pony. And I basically found out they made the CCG that it only stopped making like 5 years ago, but it first came out 9 or 10 years ago. When it first came out, the first 2 sets were huge. Like their sales numbers were almost as big as Magic, apparently. And then it really like fell off. But there are so many kids who grew up with My Little Pony as like their thing. Obviously not as big as Pokemon. And I have the same thesis. Like when they get into their 20s and 30s, they're going to come back to it. They're going to be looking for the rarest stuff, right? Like I'm collecting the rarest stuff that was printed later sets that like barely got printed at all. And then they're also adult collectors too, like the whole phenomenon of bronies, which is like fascinating to I've watched some like videos about this. I don't personally self-identify that way, but there were like a whole group of like adult male fans of this for like 10 years. And some of them are still the ones who collect this game. So I like it because I think it's super fun. I like that feeling of like something new and explored. And I do have this long-term thesis about it.
I know Dan, DJ Gigabyte, I think, has made some videos on it. And
nice.
He collects literally everything and knows everything.
Yeah. I he had that video of like 100 different card games.
He knows so much more than anyone else. About like every like I'm doing 25 different games or something, or games / collectibles. He does like 25 a month. Like like he has those months where he does like a different card game every single day, and he's like an expert on all of them. Or like fairly deep on all of them. He probably knows 100, 200 or whatever.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
I love the history aspect of it too. Like going back and just being like, this was a phenomenon. I personally missed out on this one. Like I wasn't part of it, but like meeting the people who were part of it and they cared as much about it back then as I do now, and hearing the history of the game and how it was printed. And like, I love that stuff too. And so for this particular CCG, like I've made some really cool connections. Like I'm connected to one person who essentially bought the overstock from the company when they liquidated everything. And so that's where like, that's been my like source and like dealer of cards. And I'm connected to like some people who like took over the game after the official producer died and like run community stuff. And so those connections, first of all, are really helpful for like buying and selling, of course, but also makes me feel like I'm a small part of that history.
Do you think reverse holo rares in the EX era are underrated still? The pop is much less than WotC cards, but aren't as crazy prices in PSA 10. Why is that? You have thoughts?
No, I've personally never liked reverse holos. What do you think?
So like these reverse holos, they're the ones, well, for some of them, they have pretty cool holo patterns, and they have the names of the sets. I assume you know what these are. They're not like, I would say, like, for me personally, I would much rather and care way more about like base set, jungle, fossil, rocket. Like I like those cards and I think they're cool, but like these are the cards from my childhood. These are the first appearances of like the first gen Pokemon, from these first 3 sets. So even if like the PSA 10 pops like 80 or 120 or 200 versus like a 4 or a 5 or a 10 or a 15, or in some cases probably, a 1 or a 2, one card I care about like a huge amount and I think is really important and historic in the hobby. Another card I just think is like a really cool looking card that really is not nearly as important to this hobby for me. And I would guess over time just isn't that important. It's still really cool looking. And I think they can be underrated for sure. And some of them are really underrated. And I'm buying those cards if I can get them at really good buys. Now I'm not paying $300, $400 for PSA 10s like some people are paying. I just think that's I just think that's way too much. Unless you have a very key Pokemon or like a first appearance, of like a Gen 3 Pokemon or something, like a key Gen 3 Pokemon, and it's like a really cool art and there's really, really low pop. Like maybe I would pay in that range. But outside of that, I'd much rather own PSA 10 versions of Jungle Fossil base for that reason. So I just think that it's the demand piece. And right, these are not big numbers. Like 100 of something versus 18 of something or 20 of something actually isn't that big of a difference. What matters more is like if this thing has like 500 times the demand, which is what I would expect over a long period of time. And what I expect is right now, which is probably why those prices are the way they are. Now, when you have the one caveat I will say is when you have very, very low pops for something, you may find someone who desperately wants that card and you're the only one who has it. And so you can get way over anything that anyone has paid.
I think in my head of like the profile of like who is a potential buyer for this, right? So for example, like a reverse holo card from a set like that, there might be the completionists who are going for one of every card at a certain PSA level. And so there's a pro and a con to that, right? The con is like, that's not a lot of people. Like the number of people who are trying to complete every single card, normal and reverse in a set is way smaller than the number of people who just want like a Charizard from the WotC era by orders of magnitude. But also, like Jake said, the completionist is theoretically willing to pay any price to complete their set if you're one of the only people in the world who has that. So for me, a number like 100 might even be too many for something like that, right? It's like a supply of 100 might feel like more than the demand of those completionists. But like I was saying, for some of these obscure CCGs, it's like if there's like 5 copies of a card in the world and I have one of them, and I think there's gonna be more than 5 people in the world who one day like me want to own one of every card that was ever made, like you could basically, any price is an exaggeration, but like make a lot on those.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's happened already. I mean, reverse holos from those sets and regular holos, I've seen things sell for $800, $900. So, whereas like you'll see similar ones sell for $100 or $120 because one was sold to someone who like, someone didn't want to sell it. And basically someone had to like pry it out of their collection. The other one was like thrown up on auction and just whoever wanted it kind of got it at that moment. And clearly there weren't 2 people in some sort of crazy bidding war that bid it up to $800-900.
Probably because it was a Friday afternoon. But I can give an analogy also, like something I'm thinking of just in the Star Wars CCG was the Japanese cards are extremely rare for a variety of reasons that like I can link another video that explains that. But also not a lot of people care about them because, it's in Japanese, not a lot of Japanese collectors in this game. And apparently the Star Wars CCG already came out in English in Japan before the Japanese cards were ever produced. So a lot of reasons why people don't care that much about them. But if you think about a collector like me who wants essentially one of everything, you're going to want to get those at some point. And so there's this clear tipping point within the Star Wars CCG community where more and more people got to that level of completionism that they're like, now I need the Japanese cards. And in one particular set of Hoth, right, the rare 1 cards, there are fewer dark side than light side because of printing errors. So there's so few of them in the world that there were some that like at the time, like 3 collectors, literally 3 people in the world wanted 1 card. It was the last card they needed for their collection. And the price of this 1 card went over $1,000 raw. Whereas the other ones had been selling for like $100 or $200, and that kind of stuff then continued to happen. And now it's dropping off. But it's a similar phenomenon where it's like there's 5 known copies of this card in the world that are still like on the market, and there's 6 people who want them. Like that card is going to be extremely valuable.
Yeah, but it's like it's very hard to predict these things, and it's often though like they're good bets on some of these types of items because your downside tends to be very, very little, particularly if you're buying these cards, super cheap and you're buying them before they've already ballooned up. Now, the danger is when people like are buying those niche things at already really extremely high prices. That's where I get a little bit like that actually could like be very difficult to sell or very illiquid for you at those really high prices. Whereas if you're buying cards that there are only 5 of or 10 of for sub $50, $40, and there's any sort of reason why that should have any demand, or you have some sort of thesis of like, this is going to become more popular because they're going to make more movies or people are going to, in Pokemon, for example, right? They're going to move from WotC to E-Series to these to other things. And you think, more people are still yet to discover them and move, or you think influencers are going to, talk about it more, start collecting it more, whatever, that would be the types of, speculative plays you can make.
You can also follow just like the train of logic in your own head. If you're like an OCD collector, like I am, it was basically like, I wanted one thing. Then I was like about to complete that. So what's the next thing? What's the next thing? So for Star Wars, it was like, then it was the tournament foil cards. Then it was the Japanese cards, all these things that I didn't think I would care about. I then cared about to complete the collection. And so you could just imagine a collector who's like a year or even a few months behind you in that journey is one day going to get to that point in your journey, because these hobbies tend to attract people who are OCD like myself. And so if you're like, if I'm a few months ahead of the mainstream collector, then to me, like that's basically, those are the few things that I have speculated on. Along those same lines, I would say like, go ahead. I still think that like the Lord of the Rings TCG is still undervalued. Like I've been collecting it for about a year now. I know it went up a lot during COVID, but in the past year hasn't really changed that much. And the TV show is about to come out in September. And I think, who knows, right? The TV show could be bad, it could be good, but there's just so much upside if it's good for people who go back to that TCG if they collected it as a kid when the original trilogy came out. I still think people are sleeping on that.
I think one thing too about all of these other markets is that because grading has been so expensive, it's really made these markets not blow up, in my opinion, nearly as much as Marvel was able to, because a lot of those PMGs blew up at a time when people could still send them to PSA and became so expensive that it made sense to send even more and more. You also have your jumbo lot. Like there are many Marvel cards that are very, very expensive. And I think some of these other hobbies have some of the potential of that and just didn't get popular within that window. I think people are waiting to grade a lot of this. And I think when people start seeing these cards in graded slabs, some of them might, people might be like, oh, like I really want that now. Now that I see it in a graded slab, it looks really cool. And then they're going to be comparing that to some things that have already gone up a lot and say, you know what, maybe this is a way I can still buy really cool things for my collection at only $20, $30, $40, or I can buy a key card from a set or a hobby for a couple $100, and in Pokemon or sports or something, that card would be $1 million, but in this sort of hobby, the same type of rarity, the same type of importance and historic importance, might only be in the hundreds. And so I think that it'll be interesting to see how all that levels out. So this doesn't sound like, sorry, more of a comment. I saw a question mark. Found it funny how people are all doom and gloom right now. Out here scouting eBay for trainer gallery cards because I absolutely love collecting Pokemon cards, even if I don't make money.
That's me right now on Pokemon.
Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mostly make money on other CCGs that I then spend on Pokemon. So
yeah. And I think like for you, I mean, I can let you describe it, but like, how much is this about making money? Like, what are the parts of it that you just really enjoy the market dynamics, and what are the parts of it that you just enjoy sort of like actually owning the cards, looking at the cards?
Yeah, I don't make
some of both, right?
I don't make money, right? Like in the end, I mean, I guess my collection is worth a certain amount of money and I've spent functionally zero. So yes, I made money, but it's not stuff I'm planning to sell, right? So it's really just to be able to add to my collection without spending money. That's my goal. And the parts of that I find fun are, I like the collecting aspect, right? Like I like owning the cards and looking at them and enjoying them and knowing that I can enjoy them in the long term too. I enjoy hunting things, especially as a collector. That's like super, super fun. And then like everyone, I enjoy a little bit of the gambling thrill, right? So I don't get a lot of the gambling thrill from opening packs because you just know the EV is so negative that's not even fun for me past a certain point. But in buying collections, I feel that, right? Is like EV is generally actually positive. And so you're taking good risks and sometimes those risks pay off amazingly well. It's just so fun to like buy collections, wait for it to come in the mail and like rip it open and see what you get.
Yeah, I think you and I are very similar on that. It's like opening packs and opening stuff, although I love it, it's tough to do. I do want to do it for like special occasions.
Me too.
Like
I still do that, right? But you just know you're not going to get anything worthwhile.
And that's definitely that sort of like, like I want to get the most bang for my buck.
But it's basically if someone told me like there's a lottery ticket or like a scratch card game you can play and the expected value is like net positive and you have a chance of like a massive payoff, like that game would be so fun.
Jay, question on pop reports. There is 18 first edition Neogen Heracrosses in PSA 10. In the next 20 years, do you expect the pop to double? What is the reasoning for your answer? Thanks for your time.
I don't know anything about this card, but I will say about Heracross the Pokemon. In Pokemon Silver, which was the first Pokemon game I played, I got my Pokedex to 250 out of 251, meaning I owned every Pokemon or traded for it at some point, except for Heracross. It was the last one I was missing. Like I had the legendaries, whatever, and I was missing Heracross. And for like a year or two, I had the save game file in my Pokemon Silver that I never erased, never restarted, because I still couldn't find Heracross. It turns out I found out later that in order to catch Heracross, you have to use a headbutt on a tree. And I never figured that out. Nobody ever told me. I never found it in a game guide. So for the last however many years that is, like 20 years of my life, Heracross has felt like my white whale in all of its forms.
There's no way, like I have no idea is the honest answer and completely unhelpful answer. But what you want to do is you want to track the pop reports. You want to see, and I don't know for this specific card offhand, I do check these on occasion. You could go onto Pokemetrics right now and check, like, have any been added this year? Have any been added in the last couple of years? If none have been added or only one have been added, it may not double. Like I would lean to probably not doubling. If like 3, 4 have been added, I think there's like more of a chance of doubling. But again, it's so random. Like you could all of a sudden get a few that sneak through. You only need 18 more to double. So I also think, like, will it matter if there are 18 more of these to the prices? Maybe a little bit, but like not if Pokemon grows, because like that's just not that many cards in existence when we think of like how many PSA 10s of lots of cards are being graded all the time. But then you have to compare that to the fact that this card, I don't know what this card is valued at right now. I really have no idea. There were sales for 12,000, 15,000, somewhere in there because it's such a low pop, even though it's not the most popular Pokemon, even though I like Heracross too. So if it doubles, will it lose some of its sort of mystique? I mean, personally, I think some of the super low pop stuff sells for too much, and some of the fairly low pop stuff, when we talk about like 25, 30, 40, sells for too little. Like there's too much of a gap there, because I think people look at those numbers and overreact to them, in my personal opinion. And then also overreact to like the 9s and pay too much for the 9s, but that's another discussion. I don't understand why you have 500 9s of each, why you pay so much more for this just because the 10's a lot more expensive, which is a whole other discussion. But, so study the pop reports. You're going to be your own best ally. No one is going to be able to be like, unless they like have a stack of those and are like, I'm sending 100 perfectly minty ones, and I think at least some of them will grade a 10, and I would be stunned if anyone had like 5 like super minty ones of these that they haven't sent in. It would be surprising.
If you go outside one day and you see a ton of people headbutting trees, you know that more Heracross are going to come. So.
If none have been added this year, given all of the demand, given all the increases in prices, given all the incentive, given all of like the packs that have been opened, it would be unlikely that it's probably all of a sudden a bunch are going to be added, I would say. And 18 is a lot for a card like that. Which one?
Team Magma and Aqua set.
That's right. What are your thoughts on Team Magma and Aqua set? P.S. Love the channel. Thank you.
Is this the one from like the XY era or the older one?
Team Magma and Aqua is from the original EX, like okay. Nintendo era. Yeah. Do you know this set?
No, I was thinking of the like small subset they created in the XY era.
I like this set. I think it's underrated. I think there's some really cool arts. I just bought some cards from it. Things are just a disaster here.
If you want to look for it, I can keep scrolling.
Shit, I can show you like what it looks like.
Answer another question while you're looking.
I don't even know. I might have put it away somewhere. Whatever.
This person about character rares, gym challenge, and such. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that too. Like anything with a trainer on it. Also things with like multiple Pokemon on it that's done well, like in a cool way that doesn't just feel busy. Part of it to me, so it's two things. One is it feels like more like artwork than a card. When you have multiple Pokemon or when you have a trainer involved, it just like, it looks more like a painting or like a well-designed cartoon. The other thing is I feel like it really immerses you in the world. Like one thing I'm a big fan of in general is just Pokemon art and people who draw Pokemon in different styles that feel sometimes more realistic or more in just like different styles. And you're like, from the perspective of world building, it's like I can see people in this world. I can see myself in this world. It makes it come to life even more than just like a typical card for me.
Let's see. Oh, why is this not scrolling now? There we go.
Oh, there's a lot more. Wow, we've missed so much.
Oh, yeah.
We're like behind by 30 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, that always happens.
I like this one.
I made the live. What's been on your mind lately?
We will, yeah, we can get that. But this is a good one. I tend to buy like a value investor.
Okay.
Yeah.
I tend to buy like a value investor and immediately sell like a flipper.
That's me. That's my problem. That's why Jake has been so much more successful with Pokemon than I have, because part of it is this intention of like, I don't want to be too in the red. But part of it is just this anxiousness, right? Of like, I've spent this money. My original plan was to hold it, but like I see it going up now. I knew that if I sold it now, I would use the profit to buy something else I want. I get too sucked into that. So I end up being more of like a short-termist. For me personally, I've just come to embrace that and be like, there are a few key things that I'm buying to hold, and I literally put it like in a plastic box and don't touch it. But most things I'm like, I won't even worry about that. I'm like, who I am is like a short-term flipper collector, and like that's my identity, and I don't really mind.
Yeah, I think that so if I'm buying like a flipper, I'm actually focusing more on momentum and liquidity and just buying at the lowest price possible. And I'm not very like it's part of why like I don't enjoy it. Like I don't enjoy buying things that I don't think are very good and that I think people are way overpaying for. But if I was a flipper, I would probably be engaged a lot in that market and buying a lot under market and sort of like flipping into that market as much as possible, because often there's like the most liquidity and movement there. Part of why I like value investing is like it's fun trying to find like the diamonds, you know, in the rough and find the stuff that I think people are overlooking. But of course, with that, sometimes it takes a while for people to find them, and sometimes they never find them. So part of value investing tends to be like waiting for the market to realize that they were wrong and you were right or whatever, you know. So now value investing is a weird sort of term because like value investing in some definitions of value investing, it's sort of like everything should be value investing because you're just looking for like deals or things that you can like sell for more later, whether that's short or long term. But if we mean value investing as in I'm going to buy something that I think the market is getting wrong now and I'm willing to buy it at full market value, that is not what I would do as a flipper. You know, I would not be buying at or above current market thinking that in 6 months the market's going to discover or realize that I was right. Like that type of time window in something like this, in a hobby like this, particularly if you don't have a lot of other like income that you're still flipping with on the side, is probably not the best use of your funds. But if you have a 4-year window or a 5-year window or a 10-year window, it's more likely that if you find something that you think is really undervalued, like sometime in that window, people are going to discover it and people are going to realize, why that card or company or whatever, asset should have been valued higher all along.
Wonder, is this part of your engagement strategy as we answer people's questions 30 minutes later? So then people watching now are like, well, if I stick around for another 30 minutes, they might get to my question.
Nope, just long-winded and slow. What's your thoughts on some rare cards being primarily owned by only a few people, such as the World Promos? Is a select few owning so many of these rare cards good or bad for their card? So I imagine he means like investment-wise, good or bad for it.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's something to what you were saying before, like how you get other people interested in games too, is like showing it to them, also making it feel like it's accessible to them. If some people feel immediately closed off, like part of this is, I think there are so many people who are coming into the hobby who feel immediately shut out of the WotC cards because they're already priced out. And so it's not to say those cards won't always be the most valuable. It's just like that is cutting a certain segment of people off. So by the same principle, I would say like, yes, if there's only a few copies of card and 2 people own all of them and they're never going to sell them, people just will lose interest over time. Not that those cards will lose value, because there might always be a very high floor on them. But
yeah. I mean, you can come up with all sorts of positives and negatives. I think you can say that if people don't ever own them, they never get to really develop that interest. They never get to really hold them. They also like don't hold a stake in them, so they don't care about them. So they're not showing it on their Instagram. They're not talking about it on their YouTube channel. They're not engaging their community around it. So it loses a sort of, the fewer there are, the less press it might get, because the less people are showing it and talking about it and introducing new people to that card. Of course, the opposite side of that, right, is just like, there's just a lot less supply. So you need a far few people to be into it. And then there's also like some people really like the fun of owning something that only a few people can possibly own. And as long as the people who own the cards have shown the cards, and we've learned about and discovered and seen new cards that have come out over the years because like the people who owned it or whatever, or the story like didn't get out. People didn't show it. It wasn't public. An influencer or a content creator or someone on Instagram or social media owned it and it was the only copy or one of the only copies. So it didn't get shown, that type of thing. And, that happens in Pokemon, but I've also seen that happen in other hobbies too, that I follow. There's a balance. There's generally a good balance. There's also sort of like the laddering effect of like seeing it sell enough for it to like actually go up. Whereas if it like never sells, people might feel less comfortable about like what the price might be and might be unwilling to pay a very large amount for a card that's never sold, even though it's like extremely rare. But the reverse could also happen of like, the Magic card, Snap Magikarp's a good example of a card that it didn't publicly sell, but there were people waiting for it for a really long time. And so when it came onto the market, like they were just going to like, I felt a little bit like a couple people were like, whatever the price is, I'm buying this copy because I don't know if another one will come. So, you have cards in this hobby that are one-of-ones with the winner's faces on them, trophy cards that are actual one-of-ones. Not that many people know about them. Maybe if more people knew about them, they'd be more valuable. Maybe people don't really care about a one-of-one with the guy's face on it. They just don't want it. And just because it's rare, that doesn't matter. Some people like things that a lot of people can have because we can kind of all have the same thing and share that experience. Some people like having something that not a lot of other people have. Maybe they, enjoy that chase or rarity. So there's just a lot of competing dynamics, I would say. It's not like a clear, there are positives and negatives to sort of everything. Anything else to add on that?
No.
Seems like you, Jake, are not partaking in the trendy backlash against grading. Yeah, this guy too made a video on my
channel. Do you think that I
channel.
Started the trend? I probably started it.
For sure. Do you think the grading mania is over, or is this just our little niche that decided PSA's opinion is overrated?
Well, I side with this, right? And as I explained in the video, it's not like I think that grading is inherently bad or flawed. It's just I'm not interested anymore for all the reasons I articulated in the video. And like a big part of that is just the aesthetic. A big part of that is just like, placing this premium on other people's judgment that I don't always agree with. And I've had personal experience with like not agreeing with. And so I wonder if what I'm wondering at like in the macro level is, are there people who came into the hobby who went with grading because it was the thing to do?
Mm-hmm.
And like at first the graded cards look really cool. And then the more they learned about grading, the more they realized kind of how it's done and like pull back the curtain on the wizard, the less they were interested in it.
I think that's definitely true. And I agree with that. And I think I was probably the first person to be talking about a grading mania or putting that term out there at all, because when I would talk to people were not even looking at the cards. They were just buying the grade. Like they weren't thinking about eye appeal. They completely forgot that like they were buying the card and how the card looked and how much they enjoyed the card. There was a little bit of like, it felt sort of like a bubble, like a mania type of thing. But now I think you have a lot of people who like, they know all of that and they still like it. Now, maybe they're not willing to pay quite the premium that they might have before, but they're still like graded cards. They're still willing to pay some premium. They still get some value of, and enjoy it. And maybe they're a little bit more discerning and they look a little more careful at the card and they're actually looking at the condition and not just the number. And they're thinking about both things. They're buying the card and the grade. I think that, it adds so much value to the hobby grading in my opinion. But I also think there's a lot of there's, you know, like everything, it gets overinflated. There's some nonsense, and people are get so attached to the dollars that they sort of lose sight of like, do they even like it? Do they even enjoy it? And that certainly, I think, you know, happened to some extent. And I think some of the negativity and the backlash is about that. I think the other parts of the negativity and the backlash is people don't like some of these companies. People don't like the customer service, which Raffi's talked about on my channel too. And they've had bad experiences. And listen, I think all of that's valid, but I also think all of that like can improve over time as like these companies get taken over by hopefully like more like better management teams and you know, hopefully capitalism will do its thing in a positive way here, and with more competition, these companies will get better. And you know, I think people trying to hold these companies to account and saying, hey, like, you know, you got to make these look good, and you got to have good customer service, and there should be a good experience, and it needs to be like cheap enough that people can actually afford it. Like that's good to put that sort of pressure, consumer pressure on these companies for everyone. So, but the whole, like, you know, nobody likes graded slabs, or nobody should like graded slabs, or these types of things. Like, you know, I don't care what you think. Like, I do. Like, you know, it's like, and you out there, like, you shouldn't care. Like, if you don't like graded slabs, that's cool too. Like, you should equally, if someone came on and was like, raw cards are stupid, why would anyone want a raw card? You should only, you know, get it slabbed. There's just something in that sort of like, which I think is kind of BS, is in that sort of like purist, you know, and I ran into this a lot in other hobbies, a lot more than Pokemon, because Pokemon has adopted grading way more than, you know, than the majority of these other like smaller CCGs and TCGs I look into. And some of them, you have guys who are like, it's so stupid to put it behind plastic. I can't feel the card anymore. I can't enjoy the card anymore. I can't do the
smell
things.
it.
I can't smell it. I can't play with it. Right? People were playing, and I think all that's valid. I think that they maybe aren't as much in sort of that collector mindset that likes something to be preserved, that likes something to be like more easily displayable, and that likes something to be like as pristine and as perfect an example as possible. And I just think that there's plenty of room for both things, and there's a market for both things. And they're now, will the market for PSA, are graded cards still overinflated, and is there still a bit of an overinflation in Mania? Potentially. I'm not really sure about that. I'm less sure of that. I definitely felt that 6 months ago. I'm a little bit less sure of it now, but I think you really touched on something really important here, which is like, I don't think like everyone's having that conversation everywhere. Mm-hmm. So I think you have some big voices in some of these smaller niches saying that a lot, which is causing more people to say it and think it. Whereas like, you're not seeing like PokeRev talk about that, or Leonhard, or in some of like the bigger, like who are talking more to like the mass amounts of like Pokemon fans. And I think slabs still are very popular. And I know slabs move the best for me when I'm selling, like, you know, slabs move really well. So
yeah, I think all that's true. It did feel strange to me that there's a time in the hobby where like grading just felt like the default thing to do.
Yeah.
And not just among the high end, like adult collectors. Right. And that was kind of strange to me. And I think part of the backlash might be that some of those people are realizing like, I don't have to get cards graded for them to be valuable or like look good or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And they just thought that they did because that's what the most people were doing when they came into the hobby.
Yeah, and I think that I wanted to make a beginner series for a while on the channel and talk more about, I think one of the biggest dangers that you can do in this hobby is like grade stuff. When you don't really understand it, you jump too much into it, you're paying PSA or some of these companies a lot of money, and you're putting a lot of money into plastic rather than putting it into the cards. And I think most people should start by putting money into the cards that they really like, and as they go, you know, start getting some of those graded, start trying out plastic a little bit. I think some people probably, because it was like so money, and it was like, well, how do you make money? Oh, you grade, you know. I watch lots of channels and lots of new things, and I reach out to people individually when I would see these things sometimes, but people like just grading everything, and with the mindset that they had just like heard from their friends or from other people that like anything becomes more valuable if you grade it. And there were, like, Dan and I would talk about this quite a bit, but there was a time when there were companies buying any graded slab for like I think it was like $18, $19. So you could grade any slab that you own in your collection, no matter what was in it, they would pay $18, $19, which means that they had, I guess, they were probably putting into like mystery boxes and mystery packs and were like scamming people with them, to be honest, but or doing like some like a little like, questionable stuff. But because I'd be a little surprised if people were outright buying some of these, just like you know, PSA 4 like reverse holo from like Vivid Voltage, like they were paying like, if you had that slab, that was like $19.
Yeah,
right? You know,
there was a time where those mystery boxes, like the ones at Walmart and stuff, had like a graded card in it, and it was usually something like that.
So who knows? But I think we're getting into a little bit of a better place. But sure, I mean, I think that like most things, the voices, you know, the sort of really negative, really positive voices are most people are in the middle, generally speaking. So most people actually feel somewhere in the
address some things here.
Sure.
Raffi looking thug life at times. So yes, that is me being tired because my baby kept me up last night. Thank you for bearing with us. Shilling MLP baby. So just a caveat, I'm not shilling it yet. I'm waiting till I get the last couple cards I need to complete my collection. Then I'll make an entire video shilling it, and we'll see. We'll see the stocks.
Raffi's the biggest shiller. You have no idea. Those like he talks quickly and in a somewhat monotone way in those videos, but it's all shilling. That's why those markets exploded. That's why the Star Wars market, because of that video. Yeah.
How much would I pay for a CCG Perfect 10 Return of the Jedi VHS? Nothing. I don't. I'm not into grading random zero. Things like actual video cassettes that you should be watching in your cassette player.
Yeah.
Would you pay for stuff like that?
I don't need to collect anything else.
Yeah, you've got enough.
I've got enough. But do I think that should have zero value? No.
No, I'm not saying it should have zero value. I watched that movie.
I think it's all right. I mean, again, like I had the same take on video games, which is not a popular thing, you know, for people who like really love that stuff, but it didn't hit me like cards did. Now, some video games that have really cool cover arts or really nostalgic covers, like that I get more, but there were some video games that were just ugly that I didn't even think were that like it's the game itself that you want to play to feel the nostalgia. Whereas the cards, it's the looking at it and the owning it and the collecting that I feel the nostalgia. But I never collected video games growing up, and I would like have conversations with Squeaks and like other people in the hobby who like got into video games, and they've been like collecting video games for a long time. So it was more of like ingrained in them. And there are tons of people online who like collect tons of video games. And for me, I played a lot of video games, still play too many video games, and collect. But I collected the cards as a kid, so it just was more natural for me. But there's clearly a market for these things. VHS, I'm not sure that there's as natural of a market as something like video games, but clearly I'm seeing people want these things. I'm seeing people talk about it. I'm seeing some hype. I would rather go into like some cards that still haven't gone up than jump into something completely new like that. But you know,
that specific movie, Return of the Jedi, on VHS, I watched as a kid probably like 40 times. It's probably the movie I've watched the most in my life. I think we'd rent it from Blockbuster like every single week, and ironically, we never owned it. So maybe it would have more nostalgia for me if it were in like the Blockbuster like video case. And I wonder if CGC would grade a Blockbuster video case. There's a question here that I can answer too. Where's the best place to put a looking to buy message? Yeah, so I really like, there's two different groups on Facebook, but they're both called some variant of dead CCG collectors. So if you're into dead CCG, meaning like they're not printing the game anymore, really great community. I mean, I've discovered new games that way. I've sold stuff that way. And so I found that pretty much no matter how niche your thing is, there will be some people in that group. It's like 10,000 people who will share it with you.
Yeah, so it really depends what you're looking for. So score DBZ, Star Wars cards, like when I was into like Batman and some Disney stuff and some, you know, a lot of different things, like so like war cards, it was all different places that I would go to. So Facebook groups are great, particularly I find, just as Raffi said, for certain like dead CCGs or GCGs. You have like really hardcore communities, and often like the biggest people in the entire world, or like some of the biggest people in the entire world, at least the public ones, that's where they are. That's where they're hanging out. Often they're mods in these things. And like they love to tell you, it's also a great place to learn. And a lot of these TCGs and CCGs, there really aren't any YouTube videos or things that really go in depth. And Pokemon is unbelievable. We just have like endless amounts of people talking about it all the time. Whereas these other things, you know, it's extremely sparse. Part of why I like Raffi's video, like even though that Star Wars, like that's a way smaller thing than Pokemon, you know, you probably have one of the only videos online, you know, talking about that specific thing.
Yeah, there's more now actually, but
there are more now, you know, or at the time. So, but yeah.
This one.
What do you want to do?
This one.
I think this one's a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Hey guys, do you think it's viable for there to be a PSA equivalent of Black Label in the future, or would that just disrupt the graded PSA 10 market too much for it to happen? A PSA equivalent, yeah, they won't do that because it would completely destroy the PSA scale, and then PSA 10s wouldn't be like the best thing you could get anymore. So yeah, I don't think that'll ever happen. It doesn't make sense for them to do it. You want this one?
Oh yeah, just
this is what you want.
Can you make money with Modern Seal today?
Can you make money with Modern Seal today?
By not buying it. Zing. Yeah.
You don't want to jump into that.
I know. This is like a contentious
thing.
People
are super contentious about this.
Politics, yeah.
Because so many people own it, and like it's very like don't like you're
I have some Modern Seal too. It's like I like it. But yeah, I still, to me, the most compelling argument is just like how many seats are there for the available products, right? Like in the long term, how many people want to own these things as a permanent thing or to open it versus how many people currently own them. And I think when you enter a market in a time period where people are intentionally buying things just to flip them or even to invest in them, but eventually sell them long term, and there's fewer people who actually want to own the thing, that creates the downward dynamic.
So a lot of like the big, like bigger people in the hobby right now, they're doing a lot of stuff where they are buying a lot of Modern and then they're flipping it immediately, and they're only making like $1, $2, sometimes $5. And what they're doing is they're actually trying to increase the amount that they're able to get from their distributors. So in the future, if there ever is, or when there is like an Evolving Skies or a hotter set, they're able to get a massive amount of that product and then hopefully make those 40%, 50%, 60% margins. Or sometime in the future, if Pokemon booms again, or Pokemon shrinks a lot and then they start printing a lot less and then it booms, sort of the double, you know, the huge decrease in supply and then all of a sudden huge increase in demand. They'll be positioned with their distributors where they're able to get a ton of the product because they showed their loyalty through these time periods. But they're doing so much volume that even on like $2, $3, $4, $5, some of these guys are, you know, in a whole year making like $30,000, $40,000 bucks.
It's probably so much time.
So you can actually like really streamline it where you don't even have to get it delivered to yourself or sell it. Yeah. Or like Troll and Toad Evo, there are ways, there are places that'll just like do it all for you for a small fee, basically.
Wow.
But yeah, everything is getting like super optimized.
That's so interesting. Do you think, follow-up question to that, do you think that Brilliant Stars is the new Evolving Skies or like Burning Shadows?
Do I think it's going to follow Evolving Skies, or do I think it's going to follow Burning Shadows?
Or either of them? Do you think it's going to be
Burning Shadows was a surprise because Burning Shadows got printed a lot. So like back before all of the boom, most people, if you had asked Burning Shadows or Evolutions, they would have laughed at you and said, obviously Burning Shadows, much better. It has the Rainbow Rare Charizard. It's way less printed. There's no way that Evolutions will be more expensive than Burning Shadows. And then Burning Shadows was printed a ton. Evolutions was also printed a massive amount, but like Evolutions just got so popular and people loved opening it. So like all the new people in the hobby, they loved opening it. Streamers loved opening it. Everyone started talking about it, like, you know, rediscovering their childhood, opening their basic cards. And like Burning Shadows, because it's so hard to pull that Charizard, like there was a lot of it and people didn't like opening it that much because it was just like impossible to pull that. They didn't like the rest of the set. So think about that. Try to learn some lessons from that sort of thing to try to predict like what will happen. It could be the complete different sort of situation last time. But yeah, I think you're looking for sets that have a high chase card ideally, but also good balance and are really fun for people to open and are something that people are going to want to reopen years later. and rediscover years later because there's something nostalgic or something that hits them about it. Are I think some of the lessons from that. So when we talk about like, will Brilliant Stars more like Evolving Skies or Burning Shadows?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Brilliant Stars is pretty good. I mean, there's lots of really fun cards you can hit from that. There's good variety. There's Charizards. There's sort of everything. I think it's a really good set. I don't think it's a Hidden Fates. I don't think it has the identity of some of these like really standout sets. I think there's going to be lots and lots of sets that have like a lot of cool looking cards in them going forward, have Charizards, these types of things. But Hidden Fates was printed a ton. We don't know how much Brilliant Stars. Brilliant Stars is also probably going to be printed an absolute ton. The last sets that I feel like, were really not printed a ton were some of those like those team up, Sun and Moon sets that have done really well and really exploded in price. I think a lot because of the supply side. I don't think people like those sets necessarily better than these modern sets. I think that it's more like they like them better because they're rarer and much harder to find and less people have them. And
that might be true, but just devil's advocate there is like, sure. I do like those sets better. I think.
Oh, you like them better than Evolving Skies and do you like them better than the alt arts? So like the Rainbow Rare. Well, there are alt arts in some of those sets.
Correct. Yeah. So I like the alt arts best. Some of the team up sets have them. But just in terms of like the average, what you could expect from a box, right? The alt arts are so rare versus in a team up set, like some of the random GXs are just like tag team cards that I think look cool because it's multiple Pokemon. Sure. It's pretty unique. So for that reason, I like it better. But I agree with you. I mean, I think Brilliant Stars is a great set. I'm not saying.
But what if you add the territory rares and things like that, and something like where you can those are easy to get.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I mean, for me personally, like Brilliant Stars, even if the set didn't have
just
any
purely
Charizards.
Enjoying the set, you prefer like a team up to a Brilliant Stars. Just as which set's better, which set's more fun to open. Putting aside Rarity and value,
I would say
you put
probably Brilliant Stars, then Team Up, then Evolving Skies.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, Evolving Skies being
because Brilliant Stars has the trainer stuff.
Subset.
Yeah. So it's just like in any given box, you're going to get like 3 of those cards, right?
Yeah.
Versus like Evolving Skies, you're like an alt art is whatever it is, right? Yeah. Versus the tag team, like you're going to get a bunch of GXs. They're just like tag team cards that I think are generally cool.
Sure. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this stuff ages and how those opinions and shift and change. And
one thing that I want to note that I find really interesting because now I see like my son is plays Pokemon like with or collects the cards at least like with his friends and stuff, and I like to think it's not just because of me. It's like actually his friends at school play it too. They really like the like V-Star cards, which to me are not that cool. It just feels like random, like come with like the new thing of the the era. But I think a lot of those things are unlikely to get reprinted, right? Like they're probably unlikely to reprint Mega Pokemon. They're unlikely to reprint V-Stars. They're unlikely to reprint these things. And so kids who grew up with that, when like that was the chase card, if Pokemon remains big and becomes nostalgic for them as it has become for us, I think those things are very underrated. Just like whatever the like alternate kind of card is of the era that is very unlikely to get recreated again, could be really popular with a certain group when they come to that age.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, that's what we've seen, in these past sets. It's just sort of that question of, will demand outweigh the amount of printing? That's the question. But I definitely agree with you. Yeah. I mean, I would focus on what's going to stand out, what's going to be special. I also focus on Pokemon. I actually think that sometimes Gen 1 Pokemon are a bit overrated in some of these sets, and some of like the legendaries from each era, collecting like their key card in that key version, that special version, makes some sense to me.
Like when I think gold.
Yeah, when I think really long term out. I prefer an alt art probably, but as far as what I would, maybe think would be the most, but I also think those gold cards do stand out and pop and are cool. Yeah. But for the price, I think they're really good.
For that same reason, I think the Pokemon Go set has a lot of potential. Like I personally, there are cards I like in the set. I don't think the set overall was that well done. Like nothing, like just not to make anyone upset, but like the whole Pokemon Go theme didn't really come out in the cards, right?
I think that's
feels like a random set. They put Pokemon Go on top of it, right? Yeah. But it doesn't really matter, right? Because there's so many people. I was recently looking at the stats. Like so many people still play Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of people, like for me personally, I love the Mewtwo alt art card, which I told Jake I just got extremely lucky and pulled from an Elite Trainer box. Part of the reason I love the card is because I still remember seeing the first trailer for Pokemon Go with Mewtwo like in Times Square, right? And that was so memorable for me in part because then I played Pokemon Go after that for like years. Yeah. And so that card, even if the set is not that well done, it's a representation of like that era of Pokemon, of that era of my life, of the game of Pokemon Go itself, and who knows if the Pokemon Company will ever create another Pokemon Go themed set. So that's part of what I'm thinking about there.
And to answer this question just straightforwardly before I move on, of course you can But it's just the price point that you buy it, and does it go up? Does it go down? I like the stuff I bought, like I got Evolving Skies. I bought it, like a couple cases at like $95, and I'm selling a few of them. I'm making money on Modern Sealed because I got it at cheaper, and now I'm selling it at more. And even after fees, I'm making profit. But that didn't have to happen. That wasn't necessarily going to happen. So, there was concerns about how much more they would reprint. Part of why I got down to 95 is because we were hit with such a huge reprint. And then it was sort of that gamble of like, will there be even more? And how quickly will this be eaten up? That set was, at least in the short term, has been incredibly sort of like bounce backy, very similar to Brilliant Stars. It's like more is printed, but then it goes down, but then it kind of bounces back up pretty quick in price versus most of the other sets, I would say, but particularly Battle Style sort of at the bottom. Chilling Reign has moved up a decent amount. I think now I could sell some Chilling Reign. I might sell a little bit and just recoup some of my value. Some, get some of my money back or whatever, some of it out of it. I always sell a little bit once something's moved up. Just as sort of I think it's a good habit. Don't try to out. You're not that smart, and so your choice. Like, it's good to take a little bit of money out when you make profit to hedge against your own sort of luck, that it was luck and it's not going to be sustainable.
Yeah. Related question to that. One thing I've always been curious about with Pokemon is like why essentially product that appeals more to grownups is mixed with product that appeals to kids, right? So like grownups, like the chase cards right now, probably safeties like the alt arts, probably some like the better like full arts and things like that. And it comes in boxes, in packs with a bunch of bulk that most grownups just don't care about. But kids still enjoy because they play with the cards and like it's fun for them to get even like a holo and things like that. And so what I've seen the direction that other games have gone in is to basically separate those two things by creating premium products, right? So like Magic, I mean, most explicitly has like draft booster for players versus set booster, and then the collector booster for like the high end, like grown up collectors or whatever it is. Why is Pokemon not done the same thing? It's just like basic market segmentation. Usually when you find that kind of segment as like a business, you're like, let's exploit it. Let's like have a product marketed towards kids, cheaper, more bulk.
Yeah, I mean, I think the story or the feeling has probably always been like that Pokemon isn't really trying to have an expensive secondary market, or really trying to appeal towards like any sort of high-end collectors. And it's Magic used to say the same thing for years and years and years. I think that Pokemon is so much more kid oriented than any of these other things. It's so much more in their DNA, and I don't know. It's we as adults want all this modern stuff to be very valuable, and some of us like the chase stuff, but I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, Pokemon has included alt arts and rainbow rares and these like hard to pull cards, which are clearly appealing to sort of the secondary market, the collectors, even the players who want to like pimp out their decks with like the rarer, cooler thing to find. But they certainly have not gone full in on just as you said on
really, like collector boosters that cost $10
breaking
or
out the product, or things like serialized cards, serialized numbers, or bringing back the first edition stamp. I've heard lots of concerns about sort of like how the supply chain would work around that, like the logistics of that, like changing that midstream, and how difficult that would be, and how all these companies and distributors and things would like hold back the best product and mark it up really huge, and would Pokemon be able to control that? I don't know if any of that is legitimate, or if they could figure all of that out. I mean, Pokemon could figure out anything and it would be doable. And I'm sure they would get, quite a bit of pushback and negativity, just like Wizards has gotten with secret layers and collector's boxes. But people kind of adapt, and as long as there's good options for everyone, I'm not sure why people hate so much having higher end options. Although I do think that I see this. So I've seen this in everything. So even in like modern Star Wars collecting, like top Star Wars collecting, which has definitely gone like the premium products, like very expensive products. I mean, you have brand new booster boxes, right? Selling for, $200 plus dollars, and then on secondary market they're going for $1,000. So Topps is selling them, for $200, $300, whatever, and then they're immediately like $1,000 or $400 or $500, whatever, because of some of the serialized items, the signatures, the different like extremely valuable cards inside. And I see on like messages and the forum boards, people responding to that saying like, I hate you, Topps, for doing this. Like, you've ruined it. Like, this just feels like a money grab. I don't like these really expensive. I like everything. I want to collect everything, and I want everything to be affordable. So it's like when you make the high end unaffordable for people, then the lower end stuff, even though it's the same, it's like loses its fun because you can't collect everything now. You can't get the good stuff. You're sort of left out of a part of it. I get that emotionally. I don't agree. I don't think that that's very reasonable, though, because I think it's sort of like you're still able to collect the same sort of stuff, but now there's just some higher end, more valuable options for people who have the money and want to collect that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why can't you just try to block that out and just be a collector of like these types of things? If it's not affecting the price anyway, if it's not about money for you, then it's sort of like, well, you need the best stuff, but you're unwilling to pay a lot of money for it. So really, you just were really happy when like no one was interested in it, and it was fairly rare because like they weren't printing that much of it because it wasn't that popular. This is in Pokemon, but this is like some of the arguments I see in some of these smaller things. And listen, there's a lot of different stakeholders. I hate to use that term for this, but like there's a lot of different people who, you know, care about this stuff, and they all have like different, you know, they want different outcomes, and the company's not going to please everyone, you know.
I probably have to call it quits in like 5 minutes. Yeah, we'll do one last question.
Okay. Should we jump to the bottom and see what the hell people are saying down here?
We're like, we can't hear you for 30 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. You pick. It's your last question.
Okay.
Just pick one. Raffi's going to pick a question.
Okay, this is my last one. Graded VeggieTales VHS is something I'd actually want. I never watched VeggieTales as a kid, so I can't relate. But I think this is an interesting one to end on, just in general, this thing of like, what is the pop culture thing that people resonate with as a kid? Yeah. But not only that, but like, what will be the desirable manifestation of it when you're a grown up? And so this is why, to me, like the VHS thing didn't really resonate, because even though I loved Return of the Jedi on VHS and I watched that movie, I personally wouldn't care about owning that in a slab for the exact reason Jake articulated, right? It's like my experience of that thing was watching on a screen, not looking at it. Whereas with the card, my experience of it was looking at the actual card. So putting it in a slab is very similar. Yeah. And so I think that'd be an interesting thing to think about today, even like what's most popular among this generation, right? It's probably not even physical products. It's like Fortnite, Roblox, whatever. What is going to be the collectible version of that in the future that will still bring back that nostalgia? Like maybe it'll be NFTs, maybe something else like that. I don't really know. If I were more of that like long-term value investor than just like a modern day flipper, and if I were really in this for money rather than just like the things I personally like, I think that was what I would spend a lot of time thinking about.
I think it is a fascinating thing to see where this goes with the grading, is like just grading like anything and everything. Like where is the end there? Like where do people decide like that's ridiculous to grade versus like that makes sense to grade? And I think that you can get kind of goofy. I also think, as we've talked about, grading cards is goofy. Like there's an element that I agree with it, right? So it just feels goofier and more away from the actual thing that I want to collect and the actual thing that I enjoy. And it's like, you know, it's like, are we going to be grading our like kitchenware? You know, I mean, like, I think, you know, that's obviously goofy, but we could probably come up with things that are, you know, maybe fairly borderline. You know, I mean, are we going to start grading like basketballs, like signed basketball, start grading like, you know, signed memorabilia in sports? Are we going to start grading like, they might already be grading? I know they're grading tickets.
Even just a much more basic example is booster boxes.
Sure. Yeah.
Like
in Pokemon.
I think there's some really interesting arguments in both directions. Like why or why not would people want that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the reason why that people have not been authenticating and grading those is because you can't really.
Exactly.
But
the authentication may not mean anything, but the grading of it can be helpful, right? It's like you just like, I have collected certain booster boxes where I've been like disappointed with the
condition.
Yeah, the condition has like little holes in the shrink wrap. It's like actually that would be something like potentially be interesting grading. Yeah.
All right, man.
Yeah. Good to see you. Good to see all of our throngs of adoring fans as well.
Oh, yeah. They all miss you.
I didn't know we had over 100 people who watch us live. This is great. Thank you for the questions.
Are you going to be coming to any Collecticons? Where do you stand? Not this year.
Yeah. Probably not in the future, but in the future, I'd love to. Yeah, just with kids, like travel is hard. That's the reason. But I'd love to go. It sounded like it was a lot of fun when you went. So.
Yeah. And I think we're gonna get Raffi to join the Discord, which will be fun. And jump in. So maybe you can ask him questions and hang out with him there. I know there are a lot of people who like probably just watched this channel in the beginning because of you, and they were like, "Where's the smart guy who I liked listening to? Where did he go?"
Oh, he's just becoming a brony collecting My Little Pony.
Yeah, he's gone into like crazy
you wouldn't get it. It's too smart for you.
Yeah. Thanks for hanging out and coming on the stream, and we should make an effort to do this more. We've tried to make a lot of videos. Like we've had a lot of texts and conversations where we're like, we should make a video, and then we just sort of don't figure out the timing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should try to schedule again, and even if like once a month we can get together and and fit into both of our schedules, that would be fun. All right. Well, thank you all for hanging out and watching, and we appreciate you. And I don't know if I have any announcements or anything. The Patreon like live Zoom thing we'll be announcing soon, like when that'll be. We think it'll be like usual the last weekend, the last Sunday. Dan will be presenting this month, so we hope a lot of you can make that. And as far as the YouTube channel, probably do another couple lives this week. I'm not sure if I have any like videos or specific topics. Raffi, you gonna post anything? You're just gonna surprise us?
Future. Yeah.
Are you gonna surprise
I have something.
us
Saving something up
with a post?
Yeah.
A sudden My Little Pony post. But otherwise, I am creating something. So I did tease this a little bit on like Nostalgianomics channel last night, but I am going to be doing with a few other people. We're going to be trying to do some sort of like, we're going to do like a fun game giveaway type of thing that I think people will really enjoy, that we're going to try and like, we've like hired actual graphic designers and people who like know so to try to like we're gonna have people we're not
back when we started this channel we did everything in Microsoft Paint. People liked it.
Yeah, we're not going to be doing it live, so we're just actually going to be like edited and hopefully a lot of like my just nonsense ramblings and and all my terrible speech will be I'm going to sound great, way better than I've ever sounded all of a sudden with the magic of editing. So hopefully you guys will really enjoy that. And it's also, I think it'll be really fun. And it's also a way I never really, like we did a giveaway at 5,000 subscribers. I've always just been like, about giveaways, but I think if we can create like a fun game community experience around also doing that sort of thing, I think that will be really cool. And also, you don't want it to be the type of thing where it's like people are just stopping on the channel to like win the thing, and then people who aren't even like really engaged in this and like this are the ones like coming away with the stuff. So I want to make sure it's like people who are like super engaged and really enjoy this, who like add a cool thing to their collection. And depending on how big we can make it, we can maybe give away some like really big things in the future, and some other influencer, like other content creators and YouTubers and stuff are interested in maybe getting involved in something like that, and maybe also some charity stuff. So
nice.
That's awesome. So that's the plan sort of for the next few months. Hopefully we'll have something. I probably am teasing a little early because I always like want these, like I was hoping this would be done like sooner, but it always takes a long time to do these things, and I don't have any of the expertise, so I'm relying on people who know what they're doing to to get it up and running.
So by the time the kids who are my kids' age, who like the V-Star Pokemon,
are
in their 20s and buying them up, that's when the giveaway will finally go live.
Yes. Exactly. So if you can support the Patreon, really appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel, like it, and all that good stuff. That would be awesome. And we'll catch you guys in the next one. All right. Take care.
Bye.